Hello and welcome to another edition of Final Review. My name is Andrew Claudio, and on today's show, a break from the traditional format. We are not doing a final review of one movie, but in particular, this time we are doing a final review of 1 year, the best movies of 2021. Hopefully, you have already gone and enjoyed our reaction to the Oscar nominations. Some of you were surprised that after 20 episodes of talking about movies, that we actually care about the movies that are coming out right now. So thank you for that. But check out that review, that reaction on YouTube, if you will. And then obviously the episode that's on this podcast feed. Now we're going to talk about the movies that we actually did love and enjoy from the past year. Our top 10 of 2021. And joining me, as always, the man who saw significantly more movies than I did this year, these movies that came out this year, Mr. Bernard Ozarowski. Oz, are you officially ready to let the world know what your top 10 of the year were?
When you see over 300 movies released in a year, this can be a laborious exercise. So I feel okay about my top 10. There are some I'm feeling a little uncomfortable with. There's some I'm quibbling with, but I feel very good about my top 4 or 5. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm the same way. When we were doing some pre-show planning, I said, like, I have a clear 5. I have no clue what the order is, but there is a clear 5 from this year. And then from 6 to around 15 or 16, it's what 5 movies do I want to talk about the most from the past year. And that's really how my list shaped out. I just, on behalf of everybody, that's like, I saw a little close to 8. I think 78 was the final count. There are some movies I'm going to eventually watch through Oscar season. For a year where I couldn't go to a theater until May, safely at least. I wasn't comfortable going to a theater until I was vaccinated in May. In a year where movies really weren't coming out in a theater until May. And then midway through the year, I switched to rewatch as much as I can leading up to our episodes. I would say 78 is an impressive accomplishment. But on behalf of everybody that hears that you saw over 300 movies this year, first of all, bravo. Second of all, how? And how is it possible that you're able to summarize that type of list into 10 or 11 movies?
So I'll say this. Covering festivals means that I take a couple of days off of work and I watch something in the order of, let's Sundance this year. I think I did 28 movies in 5 days, 6 days, something like that. So there tend to be these very congested periods of watching, but in general, I watch a movie basically every day. I don't sleep much, so my family will all go to bed, and then it'll be me turning on a 2.5-hour movie at 12:30 at night. So sleep is for the weak, or at least those who don't care about watching 300 movies in a year.
So that's where I fell short, is that I literally last night we were texting and I was like, dude, I'm exhausted. I need to go to bed. And you're like, okay, I just put on. What's the Netflix thing?
I watched the Tinder Swindler.
The Tinder Swindler. I've heard it.
1 a.m. last night.
Yeah, I heard it.
Pretty
and
good.
I was like, I'm going to bed. I would put that on the list of things I probably won't get to watch. Regardless, I do think despite the limitations of this year, there's a whole other Oscar conversation about what the industry seems to be headed toward rewarding now and the disconnect between that and the box office there seems to be. But aside from that, I do think there's strangely a lot of quality that came from this year, despite the limitations of like productions being delayed and COVID factoring in. And, I have a solid, like I said, 5 movies that I really love and I'm probably going to think about long after 2021. And then I get up to like 20, 25 movies before there's a real drop off. Did you find that? Obviously, probably on a bigger scale. But how did you view 2021 as a year?
There are maybe 40, 45 movies this year that I feel pretty passionately about. And I think I think obviously that's a function of seeing as many as I do, because it means, a 10 to 15% like real hit rate of something I feel passionately about is actually kind of normal for most people. It actually syncs up with what you're saying. 78 movies and you've got 5 or 6 that you feel real passion for. It's about 10%. I'm kind of the same way. And I mean, look, it's all over the map. I like my superhero bullshit. I like my genre stuff. And I definitely like some pretentious douchebag stuff, some of which has already been announced. then it'll be in the Criterion Collection.
There you go.
My number one, A Hint, has already been announced as a Criterion Collection movie.
Okay. Wow. Okay. We will be talking about it for both of us, I'm pretty sure, on this episode. Okay. I think we've previewed the lists enough. You ready to get into this? We're going to go 10 to 1. We're going to go back and forth. If there is a crossover, the other person will let the person saying the movie know, and we will skip it until we get up to that point in the list. So, for example, if my number 10 is Oz's number 3, then he will let me know, and we will skip over the conversation at 10 and have it at 3. So we have the full conversation all at once. Oz, you get to go first. Your number 10 movie of 2021.
My number 10 movie, and I'm going to say the movie and then give the explanation. My number 10 movie is Nightmare Alley, which is Guillermo del Toro's horror noir of a carnival con man who becomes a mentalist and sort of weaves his way into high society and keeps conning until consequences do or do not catch up to him. It is perhaps the best performance of Bradley Cooper's career, sadly unrecognized because it seems that the actors didn't watch their screeners of Nightmare Alley. Just everyone else in the Academy managed to watch it. It is, as the shocking Best Picture nomination shows, one of the best designed and one of the best crafted movies of the year. The production design is simply astonishing. I love this movie. I've now revisited it and I feel even more passionately about it than I did the first time. And I appreciate, having gone back and watched the original version of it, that in olden times, this movie pulled its punches a little bit. This one doesn't. It's kind of a nasty movie, and that appeals to me. So I would really strongly recommend Nightmare Alley. It's one of the 2 or 3 best made movies of the year, up there with Dune. And it's for a 2.5 hour movie. It absolutely flies by.
So I've seen a lot of people, and like I saw this with you at a screening in December. So it obviously didn't hit me as much as it did you. It's not on my list, but I've seen a lot of people say that there's like a first half they love and a second half they don't, or vice versa, that they didn't really like the first half. Then when Cate Blanchett shows up in the second half, that's where it really took off for them and really enjoyed it more. Do you fall in the camp of one or the other, or is it both halves work equally as well for you?
I think the people who end up with it on their top 10 list have both halves working equally well. I think there's different appeals. I was sad when it leaves the carnival at the end of the first act because there's a design element to it that's so creepy and fantastical and gets into sort of Guillermo del Toro's long fixation on the phantasmagoric that it really, really works from an aesthetic perspective. But there's not an awful lot of plot. There's not a lot of things happening, not a lot of inciting action. And I think most of the excitement of the story happens in the later act. And it's just a killer array of actors in this thing. And a lot of them don't show up until you get away from the carnival. So I think both halves of this movie work quite well, but they're pretty different movies stuck together here.
Yeah, the last shot of this movie is amazing. You nailed it on the design as well. This movie's on HBO Max and Hulu if you guys want to check it out right now. So you don't have to brave the trip to the theater. Although one might argue that the reason that this movie was so overlooked is because nobody did brave the trip to the theater for this movie, at least. The first half, I think, sticks out more to me. Mentalism as like a thing is just like spooky. Whenever Kimmel or Fallon have one of their mentalists come on and they guess like what's in your pocket and or they come out with they make you say how many cards are in the deck without you even realizing it. Yeah, that stuff's just spooky to me, and I think it's played for laughs, but it also played really well in this as well. I love Cooper in this performance as well too, so I don't disagree with that at all. Good pick. We're off and running with Nightmare Alley at number 10. So Oz, we've established, I think, on the pod that you lean more a little art house with yours. While you do love your fun, turn your brain off comedies or action movies. And it's fitting that I show up here with my number 10, Free Guy, the person that you went for Halloween. You went as Guy, the Avatar, the Ryan Reynolds character. I do not get the pushback to this movie. This is fun. This is, yes, there's some shameless, almost similar to Space Jam 2, like franchise inner studio pandering going on here, when literally the turning point of the movie is that Guy pulls out a lightsaber and Captain America's shield at some point. I don't care. This movie, the comedy lands. Ryan Reynolds isn't just Deadpool, which he is in so many other movies. I am unread noticing him so I could talk about Free Guy for this episode alone. Okay. Just for this episode alone. This movie is fun. It's funny. Like, it's also kind of an updated version of some of the like silly comedies that we see about the 80s and 90s, even the 2000s, in that you get these like fake news reports on events that show up like all throughout Ghostbusters. Like, shout out to Ivan Reitman, rest in peace. But like, you have the fake news reporters in that movie, and that is how things would be covered. Like, an event like that would be covered back in 1984. And in this, and it's funny seeing this through the prism of my little brother, how he's big into gaming and that whole YouTube streamer world. And for Free Guy, all of the reactions are streamed live on YouTube and everybody's watching it on Twitch. And I don't understand this world at all. But for him, this is the modern way he attains news. And that's how a modern event like this would be attained. Now, I get the danger of YouTube being the place you get information from, but this is how it would work. And I was fascinated by how it was almost a conscious decision that there's no like reporter with a microphone on the scene. It's just, let's see what, this famous YouTube streamer has to say about this gaming event. One of the early nominees for this year where it was just like, I can't explain why I love this movie, but I do. And when I came to narrowing it down to 10, this was absolutely going to be one of them.
I think that my most important observation about Free Guy is that it broke my 3-year-old son's brain. He spent the entire movie with a dumbfounded, joyful expression on his face, and then just clapping and cheering, like uproarious cheering during the movie by himself. It was just, he was the one cheering happily, which is great. Like, have your moment, Logan. And I went, in fact, as Guy for Halloween because I love my child and I wanted him to like me more than his mother for a couple of hours. Yeah. But no, this is fun. This movie's super fun. The cameos, which I don't think we should spoil if you haven't seen it, are quite great. And what you didn't mention is that one of my favorite performers on earth right now, Jodie Comer, is, I think, kind of the MVP of this movie. She's not playing the funny card the way Reynolds is, but has to make a very unworkable on the page part play. And I think that she actually does make it work quite incredibly well. She is a absolutely Herculean talent who may in fact be mentioned later again on this show.
I figured there may be a second performance that she had this year that may come up, but yeah, she's great in this. Kid who plays Steve Harrington from Stranger Things is also really good. Taika Waititi's character is, it almost is in a different movie, but also fits as like the bad guy, the big tech pompous asshole that is running the company, but also when he's laying out the why of it all for why he did what he did to the two of them. Like, you kind of hear it out. I was like, all right, well, you clearly know how this works. So while I know you're supposed to be the bad guy, I kind of see your side on this. But yeah, this is one of the first like, oh, date movies are back. I dig this for 2021. Okay, that's my number 10. Oz, you're number 9.
So despite my complaining about sexless superhero movies, I in fact do like superhero movies. And there's one that I liked more than any other this year. It's the one that I've seen the most times. It's probably in the dozens at this point. It's the one with the best soundtrack this year. It is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I'm telling you, that soundtrack is a banger. It's on all the time in our house. It's really good.
We should wait.
Your skeptical look.
We should wait.
Oh no! All right, we're waiting. I'm finding my tongue.
You're good. Sorry. We don't have to wait long.
Up front.
You're good. We don't have to wait long. I promise. So I'll just get my number 9 out of the way. And it's King Richard. And we did an entire pod on this and my appreciation for Will Smith. This is most likely, barring any more momentum for Power of the Dog, I think this is going to be Will Smith's Oscar. This is the story of Will playing Richard Williams, the notorious father and self-promoted tennis coach of Venus and Serena Williams, the tennis greats, Venus and Serena Williams. I'll just say this, aside from what we already said on the pod and what we like and don't like about it, I remain fascinated by executive producer Venus and Serena, in that this seems to be like how they want their father to be depicted. And it's like on a rewatch of this movie, I can't get it out of my head that this was them saying, yeah, all of the judgments and accusations you threw at my father, like this, we're very happy with how we were raised. We're very fine. What you thought is maybe controversial or abusive, we actually think it toughened us up. Now we can argue on our own merit, like whether we think it is or not, but at the end of the day, this is how they viewed their father. So it's almost like a testament to them wanting to tell this story this particular way that I found fascinating. Like I've been hearing people on a couple of podcasts that I listen to talk about the movie, and they say, like, I don't like that Venus and Serena were involved because it's not a true depiction of him. And it's like, actually, I think it might be the truest one. That's scene where Child Protective Services is called on them. And Will gets to have what is like one of the Oscar moments where he says, like, yeah, their beds are made, their grades are high. This person's going to be a future doctor. This person's going to be a future lawyer. We got some future tennis pros in here. What am I doing wrong? And I felt that coming from Venus and Serena, that we are as successful as we are in testament to how we were raised. And that's just something I didn't say in the last pod that I've come to, I guess, appreciate a little more as a result of some time being away from it and some of the not backlash, but the conversation around this movie since. So King Richard will be my number 9.
That's interesting. I have to be honest. I kind of feel the opposite. It's one that's
the opposite. Okay.
It's one that's aged sort of poorly for me. And I never care about it's not accurate thing. It's a fictional story. It is what it is. It's taking the bones of a real life to tell a thematic story. That's fine. I don't know why it's aged so poorly for me, but maybe it's just that it's a very well done cliche sports story. And when it's taken on this sort of imprimatur of greatness from the Best Picture nomination, the Best Actor nomination, the fact, he's clearly going to win Best Actor, barring a very surprising Cumberbatch upset. Maybe it's just the weight of that for me, and the fact that I'm just sort of bummed that I think I would like Will Smith to win an Oscar. I'm fine with him winning for this, but I don't feel passion for him winning for this performance. I mean, what did it rank? 3rd or 4th for me when we did Will Smith movies a couple weeks ago. So I don't think it's his best performance. I think the movie is I think I called it a solid 8 out of 10 when we reviewed it, and I stay there now. So it's not making my top 10, but it's a good movie.
This isn't a deal breaker for us. Don't worry.
No, this is an easy spat.
This also comes in with the baggage of having my guy in it. So it already came in as a 5 out of 10 because Will was on the poster. And if it was somewhat competent, which, look, we say this on our bonus episode, the tennis is really good in this, and it's really tough to do tennis well in a movie, or just like to get the sport right. And the tennis is believable in this. So I give that the filmmaking, as well as the some of the performances, a job well done as well.
And shout out to Anjanae Ellis and John Bernthal, who are kind of my 2 favorite parts of the movie. No offense to Will.
They're both great in the movie, so I have no complaints there. Your number 8.
My number 8 is where I turn into a 73-year-old treacly old British man and select Belfast, which is a movie that I found quite delightful and quite moving. I suspect if I didn't have young children, it might not have impacted me in the same way it did. It is the story of the most beautiful Irish family that has ever lived, played by Jamie Dornan and Catriona Balfe, and their son during the Troubles, as Belfast was torn apart through religious strife. And both Academy Award nominated Judi Dench and Ciarán Hinds are also in this movie as the grandparents of the young boy who is sort of the eyes and ears of the audience, and an avatar essentially for Kenneth Branagh's own experience as a youth. And I think this movie is touching in this sort of manipulative way that King Richard is. I think it's quite well acted. And there's something about it that just hums for me. And I get that there are a lot of folks who are kind of writing it off as a treacly old man movie. And I guess it is sort of a treacly old man movie, but there's a little bit of extra energy and verve. There's an interesting thing Branagh does with color and the way creativity and the arts bring the world of this young child to life. It's a Thor comic book or a staging of A Christmas Carol on stage that pop up in color when everything else is this grayscale black and white. I think it speaks to the way the arts can inspire and enliven. And I think this is a good movie and probably our runner-up for Best Picture this year. Yeah,
it was a long time to consider the front runner, and then the momentum for Power of the Dog is just undeniable. It missed my list, but like just barely. Which again, there's that 8 movie stretch of just movies that I feel similarly about. I figured it was popping up on your list. The Thor comic book of it all and little Easter eggs to what molded Kenneth Branagh into who he is now is fascinating. The fun scene at the end where they're singing Everlasting Love, and you just get to see a good performer be good. This is going to be Ciarán Hinds' Oscar, most likely, and what happens to his character might be what happens to his character in this movie. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but is effective when it happens. And it's like you mentioned, I talked about this when we did the Remember the Titans about Russalot, the Hope and Glory movie. When you're watching these real life tragic events through the eyes of a kid, there's an innocence to them that adds to the effectiveness of the storytelling and as some of the seriousness, like your parents are fighting, but you're not ever really told that like from our perspective, we understand where his dad is coming from. Like we need to move out of this zone right now. We need to do what's better for our family. I have to go where there is work. And for him, it's the end of the world because I'm leaving home. I just got to know this girl. I finally got to talk to her. And now I have to leave like home forever. And it's the most devastating thing that could happen. Those are really effective, versions of stories when they're told. And this is another effective version of it. So I don't disagree. Now we can talk about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. My number 8. I actually thought it was going to be higher for you, so I left it down here and figured we'd be skipping up, which I guess speaks to how much more quality you found in the
too much pretentious bullshit.
Yeah, the Criterion corner that you're going to be sitting on this morning, this evening.
I suspect that all of the movies ahead of this on the list have combined worldwide to make less money than Shang-Chi did, and like pick whatever European country you want. So this is not
most likely. Yes. I'll just say this then, because I'll say what I have to say and then I'll move on. This has the best choreography of any MCU film, which is why it's got. I don't think it's even close to best fight scenes across the board. We've talked about it a lot through our final reviews. When you do a fight scene and I have no idea where a punch is going or who's getting hit when, the perspective of everything is so lost when you do that quick cut stuff. And this seems so well thought out. I think it's called the Minu bus or a Mooney bus. That's what it's called in San Francisco, the Mooney bus scene, where the two buses are being torn apart and it's all happening. The entire fight is taking place on those buses. It's another one of those the Die Hard rule. How did they do that? And it goes to why that's up there for best scenes in the MCU. And I'd argue don't qualify it with just the MCU. Best scenes in action movies altogether in one of these martial arts movies. And then Tony Leung is, I don't know if I know what you're going to say about him in a second. So I'll just say he's one of the best and one of my favorite as far as character motivations, because I kind of see what he's going for and why he's still dealing with this. And that type of life experience makes you do some things. So I relate to the decision making that he has, which when you give a villain that type of motivations and that type of backstory, there's layers to it. And it's not just good versus bad. It's layered character having to decide what's good and what's bad. Okay, Oz, why did you love Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings?
Honestly, a small part of it, beyond the fact that it did delight me, everything you said. I actually think that I selected the bus scene to score points when we did best action scenes on The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree with you. And on Tony Leung, who's amazing here, and I think if he's not the best MCU villain, he's right in the conversation. Look, he's an amazing actor, and he's someone that, at least for me, every performer that you see, if you have a relationship with them over the years, you cannot go to a Tom Cruise movie if you've seen Tom Cruise movies before and not bring some part of that into your mind subconsciously. I'm coming into a relationship with that character differently than you, because I've watched every Wong Kar-wai movie. So, this is a guy who has sort of like a raging sensuality to him. And he, for me at least, manages to bring a bit of sex appeal to the Marvel movies. I just wrote about Uncharted today, and how Tom Holland is just like a dripping rag of asexuality. He's like a Ken doll, and Tony Leung is the opposite. And that wuxia fight scene at the beginning of Shang-Chi has more eroticism in it than everything after they stopped having sex in Iron Man 2 and in Marvel movies. So Eternals. But I really, I think this movie works from an energy perspective. I think this movie works from a sensuality perspective. I think it's funny. I think the inevitable unending bullshit at the end of CGI shit smashing into one another has a real emotional tether of the father-son battle. And I think that dragons slamming into each other is better than blue lights in the sky as CGI bullshit to end it goes. This movie is really, really good. And I think it's my favorite MCU movie ever. I love this.
Yeah. I've been hearing this take for a while. Knowing you and where your interests normally lean, I'm not surprised by that at all. Good pick. Your number 7, Oz.
My number 7 is a movie by Paul Thomas Anderson called Licorice Pizza, which I imagine we're going to be talking about later.
Yes. Wow, that I'm higher on it than you were from where we started on this. My number 7 is the second biggest 180 I did on a movie this year, and it's Encanto. Is it on your list? No.
Encanto is not on my list, but I mentioned before we recorded that I thought about doing a combined entry, and my combined number 9 would have been Shang-Chi and Encanto as the two movies that mean the most to me as a dad. So it was that close to being on my top 10 list.
So Encanto, a movie.
I like how you keep pronouncing it that way.
You're welcome, Dad. You're welcome, Mom and Dad. This is a movie about a Hispanic family with magical gifts that help the entire town that they're near. They live in a house called an Encanto. Their magic is starting to fade away, and one of the kids who doesn't have the same gifts that they do, is trying to figure out why the magic is disappearing. And off we go with an adventure. This is close to perfect the more I watch it. And despite our conversations about theater experiences, as far as a movie is concerned, when you really get to sit down and dive into it, the fact that this story is like centered around characters that look like my dad, and it's so well done, and it's like a step forward for representation. I'm going to talk about Bruno for a second, even though we don't talk about Bruno. First of all, still a bop. And second of all, like just that idea that you have that outlier in the family that gets pushed to the side and gets blamed for everything. And that outcast, every family I feel has that member. And at the end of the day, they're still family. And I know like we're in a time when we're so polarized, and like obviously you don't get that from this movie, the polarization that's come from politics and different worldviews. But like at the end of the day, I know my family's in my corner, and the story, I'm blanking on the main character's name, so I'm gonna look
Mirabelle.
it up. Mirabelle, yes. So the Stephanie Beatrice Mirabelle.
I've seen it more than you.
Yes, you have. I've seen it 3 times, and each time I forget you have kids. So of course you see it more than I do.
If I tell my 1-year-old daughter, if I say the word Bruno to her, she starts dancing. It's like,
okay. I thought she was going to yell, "We don't talk about Bruno." So the Mirabelle character being like, again, an outcast, and how like she's judged for most of the movie or belittled by her family. And you wonder why the magic's disappearing. It's because you worry about like what your family or what somebody can do rather than who they are. And if I'll relate it to a personal thing. Like my brother does not follow sports as much as he used to. And I used to belittle him and like begrudge the fact that like you dove into, I just talked about the fact that he's big into gaming, that you'd rather watch other people play League of Legends than watch like the Mets tonight. First of all, in hindsight, very good decision to stop watching the Mets. And second of all, like that's who he is. And that's like the actual like magic of a family is like when you appreciate somebody despite the differences and the what you might consider gifts. And that's what the grandmother gets to learn in this movie. And it's like a good story like for kids to learn, but also for parents watching this to remember that just because your kid doesn't turn out with the gifts that you perceive as the best possible way that they could turn out, there is still like magic to who they are as a person. And yeah, I'm very glad I gave this a second chance and that enough people told me how great it is. And look, I've kind of buried the lead. Lin-Manuel Miranda on the 1s and 2s here is kind of a good formula for any type of musical. May come up later in the pod as well. And this is one of the 2 best things he was responsible for this year. I will say. So yeah, Encanto, my number 7.
I totally agree with everything you said, even though you were just the Isabella to your brother. It's a little mean. One thing I would add, it is the most beautiful animated movie I have ever seen. It is, the level of detail is astonishing. I sort of can't believe that Disney passed Pixar at their own game, though I guess it has to do with the internal politics and cannibalization that's happened with Pixar and how everyone's leaving because they're upset that they turned Turning Red into a direct video movie for the 3rd Pixar movie in a row. But to leave the business aspects behind, this movie is absolutely stunningly beautiful. And really, I know everyone likes Bruno. I quite like the Pressure song, but
Surface Pressure. I don't know what it is. I don't see it, but consensus across the board, everybody loves that song.
Every song in this is good. There's not a dud song when the soundtrack comes on that I'm like, nope, we gotta skip this one. I can't do it. Everything is good. I love this movie.
Yes, I agree. And just to give my brother a little credit, watch the entire Super Bowl with me. Watch the entire football game. Granted, the first football game he's watched throughout the NFL playoffs, which were actually very fun. But like, watch the entire Super Bowl with me. Yes, I guess it's Tuesday, so 2 days ago. We still bond over sports, despite the fact that he's not as into sports as much as he used to be. Okay, we're at number 6. Oz, your number 6.
My number 6 is a Netflix release. It's a film that I actually saw in theaters before it came out on Netflix. And it's a little movie called Red Notice. No, I'm kidding. It's The Lost Daughter by Maggie Gyllenhaal. No, Red Notice is actually my least favorite movie that I saw last year, even if it's not necessarily the worst. The Lost Daughter by Maggie Gyllenhaal is no, please.
Oh no, like worse than Space Jam: New Legacy? Because those are my bottom 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you were offended by Red Notice more than you were New Legacy?
I view Red Notice as a harbinger of doom, death, and destruction. It is the Gozar of movies. It is a symbol of what's going to happen. Now that the Oscars are dying, their ratings, like 9 million people watched last year, and it's going to be even less this year. Like Nobody's going to watch Drive My Fucking Car. Like, great movie. Nobody's going to watch Drive My Car. Nobody cares about any of these nominees except for maybe Dune. And everything else is for people like me to nerd out over. And no one's going to watch. The ratings are going to drop. And that means the calculus changes for Netflix. And now that they're going to win Best Picture this year, all of a sudden it's a lot easier to stop spending $150 million to let Marty do whatever the fuck he wants, or to let Spike Lee do whatever he wants, or to let Maggie Gyllenhaal do whatever she wants. Because the value of an Oscar, what it means for the prestige of your service, what it means for your subscriber numbers, is going to drop when nobody watches the Oscars anymore. So we're in sort of an awkward death spiral here of funding for high-end movies. Meanwhile, this bag of shit that was quite literally made by a computer algorithm so that The Rock could sell tequila and Ryan Reynolds could sell gin and Gal Gadot can, for reasons that escape me, keep acting. This fucking thing is just, it is the movie that 10 years from now, I'm going to look back on and say, this is why there are no nice things. This is why there's nothing but $200 million superhero TV shows, Lord of the Rings readaptations, and whatever other fucking IP we can come up with is going to be because of Red Notice. Red Notice is ground zero for the death of serious cinema.
But how do you really feel?
I've actually, I edited.
You held it back,
so much. Just that I kept so many 4-letter words inside. It was really difficult. Right. I hate that movie.
But a Netflix movie you did like, yes.
So The Lost Daughter is a brilliant rumination on parenthood and why some people are perhaps not destined to be parents. It stars Olivia Colman in what may be her greatest performance, which is saying something because Olivia Colman is a goddamn treasure, along with Dakota Johnson, Dagmara Dominchik, who you best know from Succession. Paul Mescal from Normal People is in this. Love that guy. I hope he has the longest and best career. And Academy Award nominee Jessie Buckley, who I will love forever. But it's really about a woman looking back on her life and grappling with the decisions that she made as a mother. It's Olivia Colman in the present and Jessie Buckley playing a younger version of the Colman character. And it is, she comes into conflict with this family at a Greek resort. And it triggers these sort of interpersonal dynamics that force her to delve into her own personal history. And look, this is a deep character study that's actually structured kind of like a thriller. There are moments in it that are surprisingly exciting. There's almost a hint of danger to everything that's going on. It's a movie that's very deeply sexy and understands that people are interested in having sex with one another in real life, that people flirt, that people have desires. And I appreciate that in our age of sexless cinema. So I think this is a collection of really special performances and a movie that has aged in my mind perhaps better than any other that I have seen this year. So The Lost Daughter is my number 6.
Yeah, this is pretty great. And one of my biggest regrets so far of 2022 is not putting Coleman as a pick for Best Actress when we did our predictions. I'm still surprised I got as many right as I did, but that was a layup. Yeah, I beat you, but by one. I'm still like kicking myself. Like, wait, that was an obvious one. What am I doing? Everything you said about this, I agree with it. It's a very close honorable mention. I think the Jessie Buckley character, you get to see the indecisiveness and, for lack of a better word, selfishness that is human, and choosing to act on those. You know, we judge, but we feel those same emotions, which may come up in another movie that we talk about in a little bit, which I assume this is the first time I'm going to mention a movie that we're going to have to wait to talk about, because my number 6 is The Worst Person in the World.
We should wait to talk about
this. Okay.